Okay, so I'm Victoria Leo again, and we're back. And let's look at um, life beyond Earth. All right, so when last we left our exciting life here, we were looking at how did life get started on Earth, because if we understand how life got started on Earth, we might have a better idea of how it got started on other worlds. Okay, so when we think about life, right? What do we think about? We think about human beings. We think about wolves, and if you're living out in the county, in the country, you think about ground squirrels, right? And bears and coyotes and pumas. Um, but most of life on Earth is very simple. It's one-celled, right? So bacteria, archaea, and they are incredibly diverse. What they use as energy sources, what they eat, and the environment in which you find them. Now you can look at these two pictures here. One of them is obviously a very acidic, very hot Yellowstone, and then we also have Antarctica. So here's the complete list. Extremophiles, phile from the Greek love, loving extreme environments, very cold salt water or fresh water, water ice, right? Barely solid lava, you know, um, life exists on lava that has just cooled, moments ago. Very hot fresh water, extremely acidic, right? And there's so many bacteria that love salt water, very salty water, that there's a name for them, the halobacteria. Okay, so we've got all these environments, and that's why NASA spent money funding these studies to understand. We now know, as of like 20, 30 years ago, that we don't need to look for an environment that looks like California, or Germany, or right. It doesn't have to be the kind of environment that humans can live in order for there to be life. Now, where did life evolve on Earth? How we got to these conclusions is a bit complicated, and we could spend a couple of hours on that. So the best uh, guess, estimation, not guess, for where life evolved on Earth, the best theory, most data, is thermal vents at the very, very bottom of the ocean in specific places where I think you all know that the Earth's crust is composed of plates, especially if you've lived anywhere that's earthquake prone or you've watched an earthquake movie, right? Um, Plates can subduct, one goes under the other. They can scrape along, which is what's happening with the San Andreas Fault in California. Subduction is what's going to kill us all here in the Pacific Northwest, and it's what causes problems in Indonesia and Chile and places like that, Japan. And there's also another way that plates can move is to spread apart. That's how new land forms. As the plate moves a couple of centimeters apart, lava is coming up from the mantle, right? And that is one of the reasons why Iceland is so exciting right now, because Iceland is sitting right on the mid-Atlantic ridge, and the land of Iceland is moving apart. And there's some new islands getting started there, and there are some new islands happening in the Hawaiian chain. That's not a plate. That's a hole punched in the middle of a plate. Well, there are geology classes, so we'll discuss that with you. And if you have questions, of course, in the second class meeting, we can do that. Now, one thing to keep in mind is look at that photograph. There's a huge amount of heat. And what is heat? It's energy, right? We're used to thinking about, oh, we need the sun for photosynthesis, right? And that's why we used to think, oh, there can't be any life out beyond Mars because it's too cold. Water is on the surface, is always ice. Aha. But if you add heat to ice, you get water. And there, we now know there's a lot of water, liquid water, out beyond Mars. Okay, back to the Earth. There's a lot of heat, right? Energy source. And there's also a lot of interesting chemicals. And the right chemistry can give energy to a system, and that can be the source for what gets life going and what supports life. Now, it's been millions of years, billions actually, billions of years actually, since life emerged on Earth. And so these life forms that now exist, they're the large, crabs and these worms, they're the size of my finger, which is big for down there. I mean, the pressure is just incredible. We now have complex, semi-complex life forms living there. They've had plenty of time to evolve from one-celled bacteria and archaea. And okay, now you need an energy source. You need liquid water to have life as we know it. And for life to start, although it can evolve to exist in very, very salty environments and in very acidic environments, what it needs to get started is a alkali, mildly alkaline environment, right? Because of what acid does to chemical bonds and what extreme alkalinity does to chemical bonds. It's easier to form chemical bonds from one atom to another in a mildly alkaline environment. So that is a gating factor, right? So we need a source of energy, we need alkaline, right? The upper layer of the ocean is acidic because water can act as a CO2 sink. Some of the CO2 that could be in the atmosphere isn't, because it dissolves in seawater. But that makes the upper layers of the ocean acidic. Life couldn't arise there for a lot of reasons. One is that it's just constantly da 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 da. Okay, there's too much physical forces pushing things around. You need quiet. You need thousands of little vesicles, small vessel, right? Where chemical reactions can occur without being disrupted. So the sulfur can grab onto the oxygen or whatever, and it's not going to get, right? Okay. Now, the way that we define life, remember, is metabolism, which means you've got some input, you've got some reactions, chemical reactions, and there's an output, right? Inside my body, the bagels and lox are being broken down, and in the presence of oxygen, okay, so we've got inputs, the bagels and the lox and the oxygen, and we have chemical reactions, and what is given off is carbon dioxide, which travels through my blood to my lungs, and when I breathe out, some of the carbon dioxide leaves, okay, to nourish the trees out there, to make the earth hotter. Okay, now, right, so I'm an example of metabolism. There's also a need for reproduction of the individual cells. So the bone marrow of your body is constantly creating new red blood cells. The lowest layer of your skin is constantly creating new skin cells. Okay, and inside your intestines, constant creation of new cells that can be sloughed off when the bagels and the lox are ready, have finished digestion and they're ready to be eliminated. Okay, so we've got the components of life can come together in these quiet vesicles, and we can have metabolism and we can have reproduction, these complex molecules that are able to replicate themselves. RNA, okay, was the likely beginning of life, right? And then when the RNA molecules start making copies of themselves, then we can have them populating other vesicles, spreading, but they're still just bare molecules. And for complex reasons that I'd love to discuss offline, in the second class, and Rick will, also, it's really important to have a membrane surrounding your delicate RNA molecule, okay, so that the replication can happen in a safe way, so the molecule doesn't get busted up before it can replicate, right? So, and having lipids form the shell, the cell wall, means that you can control, not you, but this organism can then control how much water gets in, right? So you can start building up, you can have metabolism happening inside the cell wall, and regardless of the excuse me, the biochemistry and biophysics involved, you're not going to have water rushing in because you're building up molecules, right, to keep the density equivalent on both sides of the wall, right? You can build up a different environment inside the cell because lipids are not water soluble. Water can't get past a fat barrier, basically, okay, right? That's why we've got fatty compounds on our skin, because our skin needs to be relatively, not completely, water impervious, okay? We want to keep most of the water out. All right, now, you've got all these things that you need. This is a really good scenario for the creation of life. Here's theory number 2. Charles Darwin didn't know about mid-Atlantic ridges, plate tectonics, right? So what he was looking for was a place that had energy and it was quiet, right? And it was mildly alkaline. And where do you find that? At the bottom of quiet ponds, right? Or small lakes, right? All the conditions that you want for the development of life. It's not as good as scenario number one, but it was all, you know, Charles Darwin could come up with, right? Okay, and there's a maybe 20% dwindling number, probably simply a result of basic human stubbornness, of biologists who are holding on to this theory. Theory number three, science fiction authors, not me. I'm a science-based science fiction author. Okay. Non-scientists love this one. Life came from outer space. A meteor from Mars, where life existed, came to Earth and seeded the Earth, and you know we're all Martians. The end. There's a few problems with this idea. Okay, let me enumerate them. One, you still haven't told me how life is created, because all you did was say, oh, it came from somewhere else. So where did it come from Mars? Well, you know, the aliens came and dropped it on Mars. And where do the aliens get it? Rick says you're just kicking the can downstream, down the street. That's all you're doing. Okay. You're not grappling with the fundamental question of how do you get life from lifelessness, right? Because that's what we're talking about here. Life is life and a natural emergent property of the right chemistry. Biology will happen wherever you've got the right chemistry, and chemistry depends on physics, right? So when the right chemistry is there, life will happen because it's a natural emergent property. That seems to be what the science is telling us. The biological and chemical science is telling us. That doesn't mean every human being on planet Earth is comfortable with life not being special in the sense of being unique. There is a certain amount of preference for something extraordinary happened and then we had life, rather than this process is pretty naturally emergent, which means it's probably happening everywhere. It's no less miraculous. It's no less amazing for the fact that it's not exactly miraculous, because miracle by definition is rare. Okay. Okay, so there's two problems, right, with this. Okay. Third problem is the whole water came to the earth from comets. The earth was completely dry. There was no water at all. And then all of a sudden, and there was water. Not a bad idea. It's a great idea. It's logical. It's this, it's that. It just doesn't conform with known facts. Darn. Speaking as a science fiction author, darn. However, in this year, June 2022, reported in Sky and Telescope, and this research I already knew about. I think it was reported in the referee journal Science in 2017. So somebody confirmed it this year in 2022. somebody else came up with the, said, yes, I studied it also, and I came up with the same conclusion. And science requires, confirmation by somebody other than just the person who says, whoa, I found it. So basically what they did is they looked at the chemical composition of the water. And so what kind of hydrogen, what kind of, okay. And it is absolutely 100% clear that the water in comets is chemically different than the water on Earth. And the water in our oceans resembles 100% the water that's spewing out of volcanoes. And we look at ash and we look at lava and we look at all these things. We say, ooh. But there's also a huge amount of steam, and that's what kills a lot of people when it kills you. And the water that comes out of volcanoes, coming out from the center of the earth, right, or the mantle in any case, is a completely chemical sister to what's currently in the oceans and in the lakes. And okay, so it is very clear that Earth's water was always here. As the Earth's crust cooled, water oozed up from the mantle as steam, cooled down, and fell as rain. All right, so Earth's water came from the Earth. And certainly some comets landed, and tiny, undetectable amounts of comet hydrogen are in the ocean, undoubtedly, right? Or the lakes, or the, because the water cycle has had billions of years to do things. Okay, so no matter who is saying, oh, give the comet water, that's old speculation. The jury is in. Our water is our water. It's not comet water. All right, so let's look at the next step. Looking for life. Now that we know what life on Earth is all about, let's look at life beyond Earth. And we will pick up this story. We'll pick up this story in the next video.